It's not 5 o'clock, and they don't care. Welcome to Wine to 5. Entertainment, education, and everyday drinking for everyday people. Your hosts are Valerie Caruso and Stephanie Davis, two wine educators who don't need a clock to know when to pour that next glass.
Welcome back, Wine to 5 listeners. Here at Wine to 5, we're celebrating our 21st episode birthday. Is that even such a thing? I don't know, but I thought, 21st episode, that feels like 21st birthday, like we should have an extra drink or something. So, sounds like another good reason to have a cheers, and in celebration, we are edutaining you about bitters today.
Oh my god, what'd you call me? Bitter, party of two. That is going to be the name of this episode. And, speaking of bitter stuff, I have a funny story about being bitter. I was seeing this guy way back, and he once told me that he liked his women the way he liked his coffee. Strong and bitter. And I thought, you're going to love you some Val. A true story. And it didn't scare him away. So there was that. But anyway, yeah, right. So Val gets right into a story. We talked last week about aromatized wines that contain bitter ingredients. And this is the sequel that strictly talks bitters. We're going to talk about what they are, why you need them, what you can do with them, where they came from, the history of the whole thing. So we thank you for being here. We hope you've got something great in your glass, but we're going to go ahead and get into the show. Mm-hmm. So what's in your glass, Steph?
So I'm double fisting it, actually. I'm following the recommendation from the Bitters book of some sparkling soda water or sparkling water of any kind and throwing a few dashes of bitters in it. So I've got some lime Perrier with 5 dashes of Angostura bitters in it. So this is very refreshing. A little orangish color. And then I'm also enjoying a new rosé that I picked up that was on sale for $10.99. And it was a 2014 Moulin de Gassac. And then the wine name is called Gilhem. I don't know. I want to pronounce it like German, but I don't. It's obviously French because it's from the Languedoc. And it's, light and refreshing. It's 50% Grenache and 50% Carignan.
I like on a Monday afternoon, you've got 2 drinks in your hand. That's my girl right there.
What about you?
So I have in my hand a repeat of a cocktail that I made Friday night. And I have to tell you, since I've been exploring the whole world of vermouth and bitters, it has been cocktail hour in our home every single night. John comes home to a new cocktail. So, and believe it or not, I mixed my first margarita last night. I've never, other than, using mixes and all that, which nastiness, really. Yeah, but I mean, we bought the Patron.
The way to go.
We used Cointreau instead of triple sec and fresh lime juice. I bought this humongous bag of limes at Costco, and we had this wonderful Southwestern flavored steak themed dinner. Everything was fantastic out on the patio, and I said, can you believe in my adult life I've probably bought only maybe 2 bottles of tequila ever.
Wow, that's crazy, Val.
I know. So I'm continuing the cocktail theme. This one, if you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen a picture of this cocktail on Friday night. It also went out over Twitter. It's called the Old Hickory. It is equal parts dry and sweet vermouth. And then I've got a few shakes of Angostura and then the Fee Brothers orange bitters in there. That's the new bitters to my bitters collection, which I now have. It's really awesome. And I've got my little round ball of ice in there. We've got this new round ice cube maker. Nice. So, and it is taking a while to melt. Apparently it's not supposed to melt as fast. I don't know, surface area thing. But right. It's a pretty little round ice cube. So it's a really fun thing to drink on a Monday afternoon. So
yeah, and what kind of vermouth are you using?
So I use the Koki because I still have the Koki is the sweet vermouth, the antique recipe, and then I bought the Dolan dry. So I figured I should have a dry vermouth in the house too. So I just picked that up Friday, and I'm like, okay, what cocktails can I make with this? And I picked up a really cool vermouth from Spain. I haven't cracked it open, but I have tasted it before. It's from Priorat. from the Priorato region of Spain. So I'm excited to crack into that vermouth. So we've had some really fun cocktails in the house this last week. But I think it plays nicely into what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I just mentioned it. We're going to talk about bitters, and I mentioned the book by Brad Thomas Parsons. It's called Bitters, A Spirited History of a Classic Cure-All. And what I like so much about this book, and it was fun because Val and I were sort of both reading it and gleaning things from it for this podcast, and we both agree that this is just a great humorous read, easy late night reading in bed. I've been enjoying the history, but also the application. So, knowing that you can the next day go ahead and make one of those drinks. Or for me, right before the podcast, it took me 10 minutes and I made this recipe that's in this book with grapefruit, and it's called Broiled Bitter Grapefruit. And yeah, it took no time to make it. It's delicious. It's different. I think it would be fun to make it for some guests, like maybe for brunch or something like that. That would be nice.
Yeah.
And there's some other great info. So we would totally recommend this book, and we're using some of the material in here to share with you guys today. So we're going to talk about demystifying bitters and then giving you some reasons to embrace the bitter culture.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we kind of alluded to this last week that you can cook with bitters, which Steph just talked about. There are all kinds of recipes in the back. There's like this glazed ham. It was a bourbon and bitters glazed ham recipe that I just started drooling over. And it's interesting because bitters have never been in my bar ever. And nor has hard liquor, really, ever. Unless I was making a rum ball recipe for Christmas or something, and I'd buy like a fifth of something. But I never really kept hard liquor in the house because I always just drank wine. So out of necessity for advanced education, we have to drink some more. And I know, it's terrible. I have to be familiar with these wines. I'm going to take an exam on them in just over 2 months. So it's an excuse to go out and really stock the bar for the holidays. But we're also learning how to make classic cocktails. So why do we need bitters? I was giving my buddy a hard time today on Facebook because he has all this booze lined up for a pit tailgating party for the pit games out in Pittsburgh. And I'm like, I know you say that nobody's bar can probably beat yours, but I bet right now mine can, except I don't notice any bitters on that table. And he's probably thinking, what the hell do I need those for? Yes, and I often thought the same thing. There were many cocktails I never made because I didn't have bitters and I didn't know what they were. So we're going to talk about why we need them. And for example, most of your classic cocktails do call for them. And I believe it's this book. It could be another book I was reading, but I believe it was this book, Brad's book here. This book is just awesome. It's a beautiful book. It's like we have the Wine 25 book club.
Yeah, we should start that.
We should totally start that. But in the book, I believe he said, if you try to make a Manhattan with bitters and then make a Manhattan without bitters, you'll notice the difference. So your martinis, your Negronis, your Sazeracs, your Manhattans, your Old Fashions, those are classic cocktails that require a little bit of richness from the bitters. And it's not like it makes the drink bitter, and Steph's going to talk about that here in a minute. My current drink, the Old Hickory, is actually on page 138 of this book, and it's become probably my favorite. It goes down so easy.
I'll have to try that. Maybe even tonight.
Yeah, and these vermouths are not over 16% alcohol, so it's not like I'm getting tanked here. I mean, right. It's like a very strong. It's like a Napa's Zinfandel, really. Or I'm sorry, Lodi's Zinfandel. So this drink is on that that recipe is in that book. A lot of recipes in that book, and I can't imagine the drink without it. In fact, I've started adding. This is really bad. Bitters to my smoothies.
That is so strange. Tell me about that.
So it's a chocolate peanut butter smoothie, and in it I put those little Trader Joe's almonds that are covered with dark chocolate, and they have a little bit of turbinado sugar and sea salt. And I put in there some peanut butter and some strawberries. I know it sounds really gross. And then I add some of these bitter cherry bitters. that I got. It's from a local producer
I bet
here.
that is good.
It actually does add, and you can't really taste it until you've swallowed the smoothie, and then on the palate, we're sitting here for breakfast yesterday having the smoothie on the front porch. John's like, I taste a bit of that. It's almost like a savory complexity on the back of the palate, and it really does kind of make that smoothie more than just chocolate, almond milk, peanut butter, and whatever you're putting in there. It kind of took it to another level, and I guess people are doing that, putting it in your fruit or whatever, just to add a dimension of flavor. So, right. Steph, tell us a little bit about why we use the bitters.
Well, and you had mentioned it about classic cocktails and the Manhattan, and they use that as an example in the book, saying that, when you don't have bitters in your Manhattan, it ends up being just too sweet. And you don't have the spice and the complexity of the drink when you have the bitters in there. So sometimes when you're enjoying a cocktail and you don't really know why it's so great, it doesn't taste bitter necessarily. You wouldn't even know that the bitters are in there. It just adds another element of dimension, and it takes away some of the extra sweetness that it might taste cloying without it, So that's kind of a way to compare it. And then also, we read in the book that, it's the salt and pepper of bartenders, so it's the way to finish off the drink. So, when it'll say salt and pepper to taste in a recipe. Well, I noticed in the book, it also said, don't get too serious about how much is a dash, because different bottles have different volumes that come out. So, and I noticed even when it said 2 or 3 dashes, I'm like, that doesn't look like very much, So I think, each bottle is different unless you're using one of those. I forget what those bottles are called, but, to measure out the dashes uniformly. But you can find those around and buy one. But so anyways, one of the things we did want to talk about are, like, what is the bitter? Like, what is in this little bottle that you use for cocktails? So they're aromatics that come from herbs, fruits, flowers, bark, anything like that, and then they're steeped into a alcohol base. So something that's 100 proof, and then you've got this concentrated aromatic flavor, and then that's what you can use for your cocktails. But, or they used to use it for medicinal reasons.
Right.
So, yeah, so where what's the history behind it? I think Val's going to chat about that.
Yeah, and that's what Steph was saying, and which is really cool because I wish I'd read this book before Steph, John, and I were roaming New Orleans and ended up in the Pharmacy Museum, because I believe I did see, Angostura on the shelf. In fact, they talk in this book about Peychaud, who came here, was it from the West Indies or wherever, and started a pharmacy on Royal, which was right around the corner from our hotel in New Orleans. So a lot of the origin of a lot of these bitters is actually medicinal. So people would come up with these tinctures or these bitters, and they would have a little cure on the label. Like, one would be for stomach ailments, one would be for kidneys, whatever. They claimed, this is, I think, where the term snake oil kind of came from, if not, it does allude to that. And back then, they didn't have the little droppers on top, or the little, somebody called them an orifice reducer once. Yeah, I know. It was an essential oil. And so...
Oh my God, that's going in the show notes.
It's going in the show notes. Yes, absolutely. But they didn't have that, so there wasn't that dash problem. People were drinking these things straight from the bottles. Just, it's like, he likens it to taking a slug of NyQuil on page 12 here, which is, think about it. It's got alcohol in it, so if you're going to just, it'd be like that. But they were actually popular in England for cocktails back in the 1700s. But in the book, Brad tells us that it was in the 1850s where people started really kind of paying attention to bitters. And by the late 1800s, there were hundreds of different brands and types of bitters available on the market. So about this time, phylloxera, if you remember, was wreaking havoc on the vineyards of Europe. It's just kind of a coincidental thing. But back here, the temperance movement was kind of starting up. And, of course, people weren't treating this as an alcohol because it was never considered like a liquor. But it was used to flavor unappealing liquor drinks. And then in 1906, the Congress passed what they called a Pure Food and Drug Act. And this required the bitters producers to remove the word cure from the label. So they weren't allowed to call anything a cure anymore. It's pretty interesting that that almost killed the bitters business, the passing of that act in 1906. And then, of course, you had prohibition, and then, of course, after World War II, I believe there were only still 2 producers around. And I think Angostura was one, Peychaud's may be the other. Those are the 2 you hear about a lot. And then somewhere around the 1990s, there became this cocktail craze. And then he kind of associates that with the bitters boom, if you will. And now they're everywhere. Well, I can't say they're everywhere available in the store, but they're all different kinds. In fact, I went into 2 different liquor stores on Friday, and I found a wall of bitters in one, which was really exciting for me. So I picked up the Peychaud's. I picked up the Fee Brothers Bitter Orange, which are 2 popular ones. Those have been around a long, long time. And then I picked up a local one. This is by Cocktail Punk in Boulder. And it's like this little travel set of 6 little bottles of different bitters. There's cherry, there's pastiche, there's smoked orange, all different kinds of bitters in there. And they give you little cocktail recipes, which is really super cool. So It's interesting to see now we have craft beer, we have craft soda, now we have craft bitters, we have craft everything. And there's no exception. But I think that's all pretty cool, and they last a while. So it's not like you have to. They're small bottles. They're not in big bottles. But speaking of that, let's go ahead and move on to our factoid and talk about how we distinguish between those little bottles of bitters that we're talking about and the big bottles that have more kind of bitter digestivi in it, whether you're talking about Centerba from Abruzzo or Montenegro Fernet Branco. They're both considered, in the bitter world, one's considered potable or fit for drinking, one's considered unpotable or not fit for drinking. And the difference we're looking at here is that those that are considered fit for drinking, they're up there around, 30 or so % alcohol. Those are subjected to an IRS wine and beverage tax, which is quite stiff. Where your bitters, those little bitters that you're buying in the little bottles that we're just shaking a few dashes into our drinks, those are not subjected to that tax. So your Camparis, your Fernet Brancas, your Montenegro, which is personally one of my favorite, they're in big bottles, sitting behind the bar normally, and you can pour those straight. They've still got those bitter components in it, but they're pretty much ready to drink. And that is the difference. You're going to hear the term Amari or Amaro or something like that, and that's the difference between the little bitters that we shake into our cocktails and the bitters, the digestivis, aperitifs. I don't know, Steph, what else do we call them, or what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that some of those things are so interchangeable, and that's what we were talking about before the show. It's just aperitif, digestif, bitters. Sometimes it sounds all very interchangeable because there's a lot of people would say for the aperitif, they're just going to have some soda water with Angostura bitters as their aperitif.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but before I started studying this, and this is not a big component of wine studies. I mean, let's face it, I've been to a lot of wine schools in the last 6 years. That's kind of all I've done. So it's like all I do is go to school. And because I haven't studied spirits intently, I will tell you I shied away from a lot of cocktail recipes because I didn't know what those things were. I didn't know where to find them, and I didn't know why I would want them in my bar if they were something I was only going to use for a Manhattan, because it's not like I drink those every night. So I say. No, I really don't. But so I don't know about you, and I didn't know what those things were.
I think it's funny how you said these small bottles will last you a long time. I'm like, not at the rate we're going with a cocktail every night.
I mean, at least till November, till I get that spirits exam out of the way. But I don't know. I think our entertaining is going to a whole new level now. I really do.
It is. I think you're right. Can't wait to be entertained when I come.
I know, right? Got all kinds of fun for us to play in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's move on to the Wino Radar. And again, there's some great events going on here in Colorado, and so I wanted to mention a few and to see if any of our listeners will be out and about attending any of these, and definitely tell us about them on our social media sites and send us photos if you go. The Denver Food and Wine Fest is coming up September 9th through the 12th. And I've heard great things about that. That's in connection with MSU and the culinary school there. And then the Colorado Mountain Wine Fest is September 17th through the 20th. And that is down in Palisade. So the Grand Junction and Palisade wine area, which I've never attended that festival either. So let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to be honest, I've never attended them. I am not a festival girl.
Anti-festivals.
I'm not anti-festival. I'll attend them in Europe. I know it's really strange, but there's not as much of a habit to get inebriated.
Yeah.
Over there, so I went to the Florence Wine Festival. Murano, people were pretty ripped up there. Vinitaly, people were pretty ripped there. But if you can go when it's just the trade and it's not open to the public, honestly, I don't do sticky glass, festival glasses, sticky. I can't, But since you're talking festivals, it kind of brings me to what's on my Wino Radar. I read this morning in the Wine Business Daily, and it's a repost from wine blogger Joe Diaz. Juicy Tales by Joe Diaz, if you've read that blog. And this is the Road Warrior Survival Guide. It's not about anything but common courtesy. And a lot of times when we're talking about alcohol and we say drink responsibly, there's something that seems to be missing in a lot of gatherings. It's happened in my wine classes. It happens around town. People get a little alcohol in them, and it's like they totally lose a little bit of cognizance that other people are around. And so this one is really funny because it was first published in Wine Business Monthly, and it is a rant. And I'm not going to go into the rant, but it's something to enjoy, if you will, about behaviors that you will see at a wine festival. So I encourage you to dig up this blog and see how many pusher-uppers and puller-outers you find. Okay? I'm not going to tell you what they are. I want you to just go and look. I'll post the link on our Facebook page and you can check it out. So the pusher-uppers and puller-outers, we talk about that. The people that take it very seriously, don't tell me what I'm going to find on my palate, young lady. The people who rinse out their glasses and turn them upside down on the purveyor's tablecloth. That's not okay. No. Not okay. The whole world's a phone booth. These are people in a tent, that are on the phone and they're lonely, so they're on the phone telling all their friends how much they're missing. Meanwhile, everybody can hear you and nobody cares. The dishwashers. These are the people, and I've seen them do this. I saw this up in was it Woodland Park, I think it was. They go into the ice tub and rinse their glasses out.
Wow.
Into the wine pourers. They call them the dishwashers. And every person that does this adds more spit than the last. And when you tell them, she says in this blog, that they're about the 10th person to wash their glass, they just shrug. So, ew. Okay?
Yeah.
And there's a couple more in there. Don't overdo it. And then, of course, our favorite pet peeve, which is why Steph created her entrepreneurial love child, Albarello Luxury Hand Soap. We call her Ms. Perfume. Please, she says, please don't bathe in it. It's so hard to taste anything right when any perfume at all is at a wine tasting. It's so wrong. Oh, the last one, the garbage man. People that throw their trash into the dump bucket. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Please don't do that. So it's a really funny article. There's another blogger out there called Dear Wine Buyer, which I think kind of went into the pusher-uppers and puller-outers as well. So if you're going to attend any of these festivals, guys, check yourselves, Otherwise, you know what? We're going to blog about you, totally.
Yes.
And if we don't, somebody else will. So,
oh my gosh.
How about,
so funny.
How about shout-out stuff?
Well, that leads me into, since you already gave me the shameless plug, I'm just going to continue on with it because I'm going to give some shout-outs to my two newest customers. One is the Goose Ridge Estate Vineyards and Winery in Washington State. They're in the Columbia Valley area. Thank you so much. And my other new customer is Church Street Wine Shop in Huntsville, Alabama. So one winery and another wine shop. And thanks a lot, guys. What about you, Val?
Oh my gosh, I have one shout out today, and I should have given her a shout out last week. My friend, Colonel Patty Collins, in the U.S. Army, just retired after 24 years. She's kind of a badass.
Yeah.
She is a badass. And I put a couple links on here so Steph could see. Her retirement was pretty epic. I mean, they had the old guard. They were at the tomb. I mean, it was just such a cool D.C. area. It was an epic retirement for this amazing woman that totally deserved these honors. And I hate that I couldn't have been there, but I totally raised my glass to Patty on that day. And she's a triathlete, so you'd be watching for her. She's got a very interesting story. So if you go to usatriathlon.org and look for Patricia Collins' bio, that's an amazing woman world. So watch out. Patty's on the other side of military life, and there's no stopping this woman. I mean, she is just incredible. So congratulations, Patty. I love you. It's been awesome watching you just kind of take over the athletic world. So that brings
cheers
us
to Patty.
I know, right?
That's
so
cool.
That brings us to next week. What are we going to talk about next week?
Well, we're going to continue on our favorite books because I think you're right. I think we're on to a book club here.
The 1, 2, 5 book club.
1, 2, 5 book club. So we're going to go back to talking about wine, and we're going to pick some of our favorite wine books to share with you guys. So,
and share your favorites too.
Yeah.
If you've got a favorite wine book that you want to share, definitely share your favorites. But we'll get this book club started next week. And I think that's all the time we have today. I got thunder rolling outside my window again.
Wow.
And I know, right? So the time just flew today, Steph. I mean, this is crazy. It's just crazy how fast it goes when you put a microphone and some drinks in front of us and we start rolling. But we would love to hear from you. You can find Steph on Twitter at Albarello Soap and on the Albarello Soap Facebook page, and check out her new soap suppliers. And I love the pictures. So if you want to see who's got Albarello Soap, check it out. You can become Steph's new favorite customers today. We dare you. And I am also on Twitter. I'm Wine Gal Unboxed, and I'm also on the Vino with Val Facebook page and on Instagram as Vino with Val, posting pictures of booze and giraffes and all kinds of things like that.
And you can also find us at the Wine25 Facebook page, on Twitter, wine25.com, or email us at wine25@gmail.com. So let us know what you'd like to hear about. And if you love Wine25, please, please, please post a review for us at iTunes or Stitcher, and share us with all your friends. So until next week,
Cheers!
Cheers!
Thank you for listening to the Wine to 5 podcast. Be sure to check us out at Facebook/WineTWO5 and tune in next week for more fun and useful sip tips.